The fight between Dricus, Plessis and Khamzat Chimaev is now less than a month away. And I'll be completely honest, this might be one of the most highly anticipated matchups for UFC fans in recent memory. I understand that might sound like an exaggeration or a cliche, especially given the hype and excitement that naturally build up before a big fight. However, this video is simply a prediction based on thorough analysis and the historical performances of both fighters. Every analysis presented here is not meant to favor, endorse, or discredit either side. The purpose is purely to offer an objective understanding based on data, facts, and indicators that are logically and empirically accountable.
Perfect.
Of course, I was also excited for fights like Makhachev vs Poirier or even the entire UFC 300 card. But none of them made me anticipate a fight quite like this one between DDP and Chimaev. This is one of those matchups that feels nearly impossible to predict. You can break it down, analyze it, and still end up being 100% right or 100% completely wrong. If you're rooting for Khamzat, you probably imagine him coming out aggressively from the opening bell and finishing the fight via submission in the first round without taking much damage, classic Chimaev style. But if you're siding with Dricus, maybe you expect him to survive the early storm, turn the tide in rounds 2 and 3, and finish the fight dominantly or even win by unanimous decision. For me, there are only two realistic outcomes. 1, a dominant late round or decision win for Dricus, or 2, a quick early round finish for Khamzat. I don't see a scenario where Khamzat finishes DDP in the later rounds or vice versa, with DDP finishing Chimaev early. And one thing is certain, this fight will not be close. Whoever wins will win in dominant fashion. About Khamzat Chimaev, let's talk briefly about Khamzat. If he wins the belt, it would feel monumental in the first few weeks. He'll take the belt around the world, probably do a media tour. It will all feel right. But I'll say this, Khamzat might not be the most exciting champion in the long run. Why? Because he rarely fights. We've already seen how inactive he is. If he becomes champion, I'm not sure we'll even see him again until next year's International Fight Week. Sounds crazy, right? But that's the reality. Khamzat is a moneymaker who fights very infrequently. And I know some will justify it with his immune system issues. But my point remains, he's just not someone we can rely on. Dana White once called John Jones an unreliable fighter. I see the same issue with Khamzat. The UFC might put him on a decent PPV card just to draw viewers, but if he pulls out of a main event, the entire card could collapse. Yes, that risk exists with other fighters too, but with Khamzat it happens too often. He's simply not reliable enough to be a long-term champion. Even if he becomes more active, we'd be lucky to see him fight twice a year, maybe even just once. And sure, his skills are incredible. Look at how he dominated Robert Whittaker in one round, but that's still not enough. My concern is, what if he's not as unbeatable as we think? What if someone like Roman Dolidze or Caio Borralho manages to expose his weaknesses? Now about Dricus du Plessis. On the other hand, the UFC has Dricus du Plessis, a champion who is active, well-rounded, and marketable. He brings a complete fighting skill set, striking, grappling, cardio, toughness, and the will to engage in hard fights. He's also not afraid to speak to the media and can promote himself, something rare among current UFC champions. So far, DDP has had a solid run in the UFC. He beat Robert Whittaker in an impressive showing, but still wasn't given a title shot right away, likely because the UFC wasn't fully behind him. After beating Whittaker in July, he was asked to fight Adesanya in Australia just 2 months later in September. DDP declined due to recovery reasons. He eventually fought Strickland in January and became champion. Despite that, the UFC continues to treat DDP like an unwanted champion, making him wait until August for his next fight. I'm convinced DDP was willing to fight sooner, maybe at UFC 302 or 303, but wasn't given the opportunity. As a champion, Dricus du Plessis has everything a division needs. He's active, entertaining, versatile, and reliable. That's why I truly believe that as fans, we should want our champions to stay active and defend their titles regularly. Final thoughts. Who's better for the UFC? Khamzat may be more dominant and carry more star power, but historically he hasn't been active enough. Meanwhile, DDP consistently delivers great fights and actively contributes to building a middleweight division that has been stagnant for a while. If DDP manages to beat Khamzat, and then goes on to defeat the winner of Caio Borralho versus Nassourdine Imavov. He deserves to be called the best middleweight since Anderson Silva. To close this out, let me say it again. This is a huge fight, one I'm extremely excited for. It would not be a close contest. Whoever wins will win in a dominant fashion. But as fans, what we truly need is a real champion to emerge for the health of the division and for the competitive future of this sport.